Stated Clearly presents What is Chemical Evolution? Scientists have reason to think that the first living cells on Earth came about through a natural process called chemical evolution. The word evolution simply means change over time. Biological evolution deals with changes in things which are able to reproduce. Living creatures make copies of themselves. The change over time that we see in biological evolution is not just random change. Oftentimes, it is adaptive change. Populations become better able to survive and reproduce within their environments. When conditions are right, biological evolution can even drive a species to develop brand new characteristics and abilities. For this to happen, biological evolution typically requires three conditions: reproduction, variation, and selection. The question, how did reproduction first evolve? To try and solve this mystery, many scientists are looking into chemical evolution. Chemical evolution refers to changes in things that need not be capable of reproduction. Examples could be individual molecules or entire chemical systems. A chemical system is a group of molecules that interact with each other. There must be situations in which chemical systems can grow in complexity, form new structures, and gain new functions. In order for this to happen, reproduction, which is needed in biological evolution, can be replaced with a much simpler process: repetitive production. On planet Earth and all throughout the universe, powerful natural events take place in regular cycles. The heating and then the cooling of day and night, the repetitive eruptions of volcanic geysers, the rise and then the fall of ocean tides. These events repetitively produce or give birth to new molecules and chemical systems. These products increase over time and often develop new abilities as they interact with their environment. Let's see an example of how this process works. This here is a special molecule called a fatty acid. It's a collection of carbon atoms, hydrogen atoms, and oxygen atoms, all stuck together in a specific pattern. Fatty acids are one of many complex molecules that living cells use inside their bodies. This can happen naturally in underground chambers, heated by the Earth's magma. When fatty acids pass near each other, their tails are pushed together by water, eventually forming a ball. As fatty acid collections continue to increase, they join together to make large skins. If fluctuations in these skins happen to make the edges touch, water forces those edges to fuse together. The end result is a stable hollow container, similar to the membrane or skin of a living cell. These containers have a brand new ability. They can trap other molecules inside, acting as an entirely new environment for chemical evolution to continue working within. It's important to note that these membranes do not qualify as living creatures. They can't reproduce on their own the same way living cells do. That said, the development of these membranes, along with many other molecules and chemical systems that scientists have observed, demonstrate an extremely important principle. Chemical evolution can give rise to new characteristics and abilities. Because of this, scientists hypothesize that under the right circumstances, chemical evolution could give rise to systems that are fully capable of reproduction. If they are correct, this would bridge the gap between chemical evolution and biological evolution, demonstrating that chemistry can indeed give rise to life. Scientists at the Center for Chemical Evolution and other research groups around the globe are working hard to test this hypothesis. Animation was funded by the Center for Chemical Evolution, the National Science Foundation, NASA, and contributions from our viewers. Clearly.com and click Contribute, who volunteered to work on sound lasers. Christopher Parson.
¿Puede la ciencia explicar el origen de la vida? La teoría de la evolución biológica de Darwin nos dice que toda la vida en la Tierra pudo haberse originado de una relativamente simple criatura reproductora que vivió en el pasado distante. Esta idea se basa en muchas observaciones. Una de ellas es que cuando los organismos vivientes se reproducen, los hijos suelen nacer con nuevos rasgos. Aquellos con nuevos rasgos negativos tienen menos probabilidades de sobrevivir y reproducirse. Aquellos con nuevos rasgos positivos tienen mejores probabilidades de sobrevivir y transmitir esos rasgos a sus procedentes. Durante varias generaciones, los rasgos positivos se acumulan, lo que permite a las relativamente simples formas de vida evolucionar hacia las formas de vida más complejas, e incluso es posible dividirse en múltiples especies diferentes. Una examinación cuidadosa de los registros fósiles confirma abrumadoramente la teoría de Darwin. Las formas de vida se vuelven más simples y más sencillas a medida que retrocedemos el tiempo. El registro sugiere que toda la vida en la Tierra surgió de colonias celulares primitivas que aparecieron por primera vez hace aproximadamente 3,5 billones de años. Pero ¿cómo se crearon esas primeras criaturas reproductoras? Incluso las bacterias más simples que viven hoy en día son demasiado complejas para haber surgido a la existencia en un solo paso. El origen de la vida necesita su propia explicación. La idea más prometedora en este momento, la que constantemente nos está dando los nuevos descubrimientos científicos, es la idea de que la vida surgió de la química. La química es el estudio de la materia, en particular cómo los átomos interactúan y se combinan para formar moléculas, y cómo esas moléculas interactúan y se combinan para formar sistemas y estructuras más complejas. Todo está compuesto de productos químicos: el aire que respiramos, el suelo que pisamos, los zapatos en los pies, incluso los pies dentro de los zapatos. Dicho esto, la química de la vida es especial en dos aspectos muy importantes. En primer lugar, la química de la vida se organiza en vías metabólicas. Si nos fijamos en las células de cualquier ser vivo, incluso una planta que normalmente no se piensa que es muy animada, descubrimos un mundo de actividad. Las reacciones químicas ocurren en continuos caminos ordenados, cada reacción provocando la siguiente. Los científicos llaman a estas reacciones vías metabólicas. En segundo lugar, en la química de la vida, las células vivas están hechas de moléculas especiales, bloques de construcción, como aminoácidos y azúcares. Estos bloques de construcción se combinan para formar estructuras más complejas y ordenadas, como los genes, las proteínas y las membranas celulares. En 1928, un químico llamado Frederick Wohler produjo la urea por accidente en su laboratorio. La urea es uno de los componentes principales de la orina, una de las muchas sustancias químicas que los científicos de aquella época pensaban solo podía ser producida por la fuerza vital que actúa en el interior de un ser vivo. La producción artificial de urea sugiere que la vida no es impulsada por una fuerza misteriosa, pero en cambio es generada por las reacciones químicas normales que podrían ser estudiadas y comprendidas. Desde entonces, numerosas moléculas y actividades celulares se han recreado en el laboratorio, lo que demuestra claramente que la vida es impulsada por las reacciones químicas normales y sugiere que la vida pudo haber surgido de la química no viviente. Recientemente, investigadores han descubierto que muchos de los componentes básicos de la vida, aminoácidos y azúcares, existen en el interior de meteoritos, rocas que han caído a la Tierra del espacio exterior. Esto nos dice que estas moléculas especiales se producen espontáneamente, todo a lo largo de nuestro sistema solar, y pueden haber sido comunes en la Tierra antigua. También hemos descubierto un proceso que ahora se conoce como evolución química. Cuando las moléculas simples existen solas con una fuente de energía, ellas interactúan entre sí y a menudo forman grandes moléculas más complejas conforme pasa el tiempo. Los experimentos en el laboratorio han demostrado que las cadenas de reacciones químicas se pueden desarrollar, algunas de las cuales se parecen a las vías metabólicas de la vida. Sorprendentemente, también hemos encontrado que ciertas moléculas tienen la notable capacidad de autoensamblarse en complejas estructuras ordenadas. Algunas moléculas se autoensamblan en esferas huecas casi idénticas a las membranas de las células de la vida moderna. Otras se autoensamblan para formar las columnas largas muy parecidas a las hebras de ADN que se encuentran en la vida. Los científicos aún tienen muchas preguntas por responder acerca de los orígenes de la vida. ¿Qué probabilidad hay de que la vida se ha formado o se está formando en otras regiones de nuestra galaxia? ADN y cómo funciona. ADN, también llamado ácido desoxirribonucleico, es una molécula. Es un montón de átomos pegados. En el caso del ADN, estos átomos se combinan para crear la forma de una larga escalera en forma de espiral, como está aquí. Si alguna vez has estudiado biología o visto la película Jurassic Park, probablemente has oído hablar de que el ADN actúa como un plano o una receta para un ser vivo. ¿Pero cómo? ¿Cómo puede una molécula actuar como un plano para algo tan complejo y maravilloso como un árbol, un perro o un dinosaurio? Para ayudar a contestar esta pregunta, primero echemos un vistazo a los aminoácidos. Los aminoácidos son diminutas sustancias químicas dentro de nuestros cuerpos que son tan importantes que a menudo se les refiere como los ladrillos de la vida. Hay alrededor de 20 tipos de aminoácidos, cada uno con su propia forma única. Lo fantástico es que se pueden conectar así como si fuesen legos para producir una gran variedad de partículas más grandes llamadas proteínas. Los aminoácidos forman las proteínas. Las proteínas, junto con otros productos químicos, se combinan para formar las células. Las células forman tejidos, los cuales forman órganos, y los órganos, cuando se juntan y funcionan, forman a los seres vivos como tú y yo. Estas proteínas que componen nuestro cuerpo, y ten en cuenta que hay millones de diferentes tipos de proteínas, deberán construirse en la forma perfecta para poder funcionar. Si tienen la forma equivocada, por lo general no funcionan. Allí es donde entra en el juego el ADN. El ADN hace muchas cosas interesantes, algunas de las cuales no entendemos del todo, pero una de sus funciones principales y más claramente entendida es decirle a los aminoácidos cómo alinearse y organizarse en formas específicas para hacer proteínas que funcionen. En teoría, si las proteínas correctas se construyen en el momento adecuado y en el lugar correcto, todo lo demás, desde las células a los órganos y hasta los organismos enteros, se creerán bien. Este es un modelo simplificado del ADN. Nos muestra que los peldaños de la escalera se componen de 4 diferentes tipos de productos químicos, que se muestran aquí con diferentes colores y letras. Si nos fijamos solamente en la mitad de la escalera, en realidad se puede leer su código químico o secuencia genética de arriba a abajo como un libro. Una sola escalera de ADN es extremadamente larga, millones de letras. Durante la mayor parte de su vida, está enroscada como un fideo, viviendo en el interior del núcleo o en el compartimiento central de la célula. Los aminoácidos, sin embargo, viven afuera del núcleo, en lo que se llama el citoplasma. Para ayudar al ADN a interactuar con el citoplasma y crear las proteínas, ciertos productos químicos especiales dentro del núcleo hacen copias parciales del código del ADN. Estos nuevos ejemplares, llamados ARN, se parecen al ADN, pero son más cortos. Por supuesto, y les falta un lado de la escalera. El pequeño tamaño y la forma del ARN le permite pasar a través de pequeños poros en el núcleo hacia el citoplasma y dentro de la boca de otra partícula llamada el ribosoma. Los ribosomas son máquinas que construyen las proteínas. Leen el ARN 3 letras a la vez, recogen aminoácidos de sus alrededores y los enlazan entre sí para construir una cadena de acuerdo con el código del ARN. A medida que la cadena crece, se dobla, se pliega y se pega a sí misma para formar una proteína de forma perfecta. Cada juego de 3 letras del código del ARN le dice a la ribosoma cuál de las 20 variedades de aminoácidos hay que añadir a la cadena de proteína. Por ejemplo, CAA le dice al ribosoma que recoja una glutamina. AGU dice que recoja una serina, y así sucesivamente. Una vez que la proteína se termina de construir, se puede hacer un número de cosas diferentes. Una de ellas podría ser ayudar a formar un nuevo tipo de célula. Así que, para responder a la pregunta original, ¿qué es el ADN? El ADN es un plano molecular para un ser vivo. ¿Cómo funciona? El ADN crea al ARN. El ARN crea proteínas y las proteínas pasan a formar la vida. Todo este proceso tan complicado, tan sofisticado, tan mágico como puede parecer, se basa por completo en la química. De esta manera puede ser estudiado y se puede entender.
Is the evidence for evolution? The theory of biological evolution makes two very bold claims about living creatures. First, all living things on Earth are related. They evolved from a common ancestor. Second, the evolution of living things is powered by natural processes, things which can be studied and understood. But is there really any evidence that these two claims are true? Yes. There are so many observable facts from so many different fields of study that the only way we can even begin to talk about them is to group them into categories or lines of evidence. To keep things simple, here we'll focus on evolution's first claim that all living things on Earth are related. We cannot tackle the entire tree of life at once. After all, there's an estimated 8.7 million species alive today. So instead, we'll focus most of our attention on one fairly small but fascinating branch of the evolutionary tree, cetaceans. This branch includes whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Instead of taking their word for it, let's look at the facts. We'll start by looking at a few from the field of comparative anatomy, the study of differences and similarities between living things. Whales live in water, and from a distance, they sort of look like giant fish. A close inspection of their anatomy, however, tells us a very different story. Whales, just like land mammals but unlike fish, have placentas and give live birth. They feed milk to their young. They are warm-blooded, which is extremely rare for a fish. And whales do not have gills. Instead, just like us, they breathe air with 2 fully developed lungs. Whales don't seem to have noses like mammals do. Instead, they breathe through blowholes coming out the tops of their heads. Some whales have 2 blowholes which almost look like nostrils. But dolphins and porpoises only have 1. Surprisingly, if you look at their skulls, you find that the blowhole splits into 2 nasal passages inside the head. Could it be that the blowhole is actually a highly modified mammal nose? It looks that way, but we'll need more evidence to be sure. Many whales have hair, just like land mammals. In this photograph, you can actually see the whiskers of this baby gray whale as he rests his chin on mama's back. Strangely, whales have arm, wrist, hand, and finger bones inside their front flippers. Here's a photo of these bones, the same bones that bats, hippos, and people have in their front appendages. 1 bone, 2 bones, wrist, hand, and finger bones. Modern whales do not have back legs, but they do have a strange pair of bones where the hind legs should be. Here's a picture of these bones from a bowhead whale. They almost look like shriveled hip, thigh, and shin bones. This one even has a ball and socket joint between the hip and thigh bone, just like the ball and socket joint in your own hip. Is this resemblance a mere coincidence, or are these real leg bones? Perhaps leftovers from the whale's evolutionary history? Before we draw any bold conclusions, let's see if a completely separate line of evidence will confirm our suspicions. Embryology is the study of how creatures develop before being born or hatching from an egg. Here we see a dolphin and a human embryo side by side at similar stages of development. Notice that they both have what look like arm buds and leg buds. In humans, the leg buds grow to become legs. In whales, they grow for a while but then stop, effectively fading away as the rest of the whale continues to grow. These are all photographs of a common dolphin at different stages of growth. Notice that early on, we see 2 nostril grooves on the front of the face, just like you'd expect in a puppy or a human. As the dolphin continues to grow, the nostrils migrate to the top of the head and fuse together, becoming the dolphin's blowhole. So far, we have multiple facts from 2 independent lines of study, comparative anatomy and embryology, that are both telling us the same story. The ancestors of whales were once 4-legged land creatures. Will the fossil record act as a third witness, confirming this idea? These are 2 species of extinct basilosaurid whales. These animals are known for multiple well-preserved skeletons, and they appear to have lived side by side, roughly 34 to 40 million years ago. In this photograph, we're looking down at the top of a basilosaurid skull. This is not a model or a cast, these are the actual bones which were pulled from the ground. Notice that the nasal opening is not on the top of the head like those of modern whales, and not at the end of the snout like those of land mammals. Instead, it's right in the middle. This is an intermediate species, exactly what evolution tells us we should find. At the back end of a basilosaurid's body, there are small, yet fully developed hips, legs, ankle, feet, and toe bones. These legs are far too small for walking on land, but they may have been useful while mating, or for scratching away parasites and itchy skin. Evolutionary theory tells us that the further we go back in time, the harder it should be to distinguish whales from normal land mammals. Meet Myocetus. The hip bones of Myocetus seem sturdy enough to walk on land, but this animal is considered to be a whale for many reasons. Their skeletons have all been found among fossils of sea creatures, which tells us they lived in the ocean. Their short legs, combined with long, flat fingers and toes, suggest they were strong swimmers with webbed hands and feet. Here we see the bottom side of a Myocetus jaw and skull. Her teeth match those of the basilosaurid whales we saw earlier, and the unique structures of her middle ear bones match those of basilosaurid whales and modern whales. Myocetus appears to be a walking whale. Scientists have found the fossils of many ancient whale-like mammals and continue to find more. Together, these fossils blur the line between 4-legged land mammals and fully aquatic modern whales, solidifying the idea that whales indeed evolved from land creatures. Now let's look at a 4th line of evidence, DNA. DNA molecules contain chemical codes which act like recipes for living things. Without ever looking at bones, embryos, or anatomy, researchers can compare the DNA code of different living creatures to find out who is most closely related to who. Whale DNA has been compared to all kinds of other animals, fish, sea lions, you name it, and so far, the closest genetic match is to the pudgy, water-loving hippopotamus. This does not mean that whales evolved from hippos, but if this genetic finding is correct, whales and hippos both evolved from a common ancestor that lived roughly 54 million years ago. At first, the link between whales and hippos surprised researchers because whales are mainly carnivores. They eat things like fish and small crustaceans. Hippos, on the other hand, are mostly vegetarian. A closer look, however, reveals that hippos and whales actually share many strange features, some of which may have come from their common ancestor. Ancient walking whales have specially shaped ankle bones found only in hippos and the close relatives of hippos. Just like whales, hippos are known to give birth and even nurse their young underwater. They both have multi-chambered stomachs, which is common for herbivores but is almost unheard of for meat-eating mammals. They are both missing a coat of fur, and here's a fun fact: whales and hippos are among the only mammals on Earth that have internal testicles. So there you have it. 4 independent lines of evidence all tell us the exact same story. Whales evolved from 4-legged land mammals. But the history of whales is not the only evolutionary history that we've been able to work out. We know from fossils, DNA, embryology, and many other lines of evidence that bird wings are actually modified arms and claws. Birds evolved from dinosaur-like ancestors. We can also clearly see that bat wings evolved from 5-fingered hands, very similar to those of monkeys and shrews. We've found that humans share a fairly recent common ancestor with chimpanzees, that mammals evolved from reptile-like creatures, those reptile-like creatures evolved from amphibian-like creatures, those amphibian-like creatures evolved from fish-like creatures, and fish, if you go back far enough, share a common ancestor with segmented worms. So to sum things up, thousands of observable facts from completely independent fields of study have come together to tell us the exact same story. All living things on Earth are related. When Darwin published his theory of evolution in the mid-1800s, he presented us with 2 very strange and interesting ideas. First, through completely natural processes, living things evolve to better survive and reproduce within their environments. Second, all living things on Earth are related in a single evolutionary tree. These concepts are interesting to think about, but do they have any practical use? To find out, let's take a quick look at a few examples of how evolution is being applied to real-life problems, starting with the mystery of the shrinking fish. In order to maintain healthy fish populations, governments often make fishers toss back the little ones. If you toss them back, they'll have time to mature, hopefully have babies, and eventually grow large enough for fishers to catch them in the future. This method worked great at first, but something strange is happening. All around the globe, people are reporting that adult fish, full-grown specimens of many different species, are shrinking in size as time goes on. What could be the cause of this? Biologist Dr. David O'Conover wondered if maybe our fishing policies were causing fish to evolve smaller body sizes. It is true that small fish are usually young fish, but adults can come in small sizes too. If the small adults are busy making babies, while many of the large adults are busy being dinner, the traits for small body size are much more likely to be passed on to future generations. To test his hypothesis, Dr. Conover and his team set up 3 sets of aquariums, populated each set with 1,000 Atlantic silversides, and fed them all the same diet until they were fully grown. Right before they had a chance to mate, he removed all the biggest fish from the first set of tanks. In the second set, he removed fish at random, this was his control group, and in the third set, he removed all the smallest fish. He let them breed and then repeated the entire process a year later with the next generation. After just 4 years, 4 generations of selection, the adults from the first set of tanks evolved to be half the size of the adults from the third set of tanks. This experiment strongly suggests that throwing back the little ones does indeed cause fish to evolve smaller body sizes. Understanding how this works allows governments to make wiser fishing policies, which will ensure a healthy fish population long into the future. Now let's take a look at another mystery, this time from the world of medicine. Where did HIV come from? HIV is a deadly virus which seemed to have popped into existence in the early 1980s. The Center for Disease Control conducted a study which placed one man at the center of the epidemic. This man, a French-Canadian flight attendant, came to be known as Patient Zero and was quickly blamed by the public for starting the disease. Biologists, however, suspected that Patient Zero was not actually the first person to get HIV. To confirm their suspicions and find the true origins of the virus, they turned to Charles Darwin's idea that all living things are related. Scientists collected samples of HIV from multiple patients in the US and found that there were several slightly different versions being passed around. They analyzed the genetic code of each version and began to build Darwinian evolutionary trees for the virus. They built their trees using the same methods that other geneticists use to make evolutionary trees of plants and animals. In addition to simply creating these trees, they were also able to examine the genetic differences between strains of HIV and compare those differences to HIV's estimated mutation rate. Doing this, they got a rough idea of the year at which different strains evolved away from each other. Their results suggest that HIV had been evolving in America before Patient Zero could have ever been infected. Early on, scientists came up with multiple trees which could not be easily linked together. Evolutionary theory tells us there should only be one tree. If we can't link branches together, there must be missing links. On a quest to find those missing links and the true origins of HIV, biologists traveled the globe searching for viruses inside of humans and animals. Different strains of HIV were found in people all around the world. Scientists even looked at tissue samples from the past, which doctors had collected and preserved from patients who died strange deaths. Primitive versions of HIV were found in several human samples and added to the tree, connecting many loose branches. Viruses which were similar to HIV were also found in populations of monkeys and apes. For the most part, these viruses could not infect humans, but researchers began making family trees for these viruses as well, hoping they might eventually find a connection. Dr. Beatrice Hahn, while studying stool samples from wild chimps in Central Africa, found a strain of chimp virus which was almost identical to a human strain also found in Africa. She had discovered a missing link. It told us that HIV did not come from a French-Canadian flight attendant in the early 1980s, but instead came from chimpanzees, possibly as early as the year 1900. The leading hypothesis is that a hunter in southeast Cameroon first got the disease by accidentally cutting himself while preparing the meat of an infected chimp. Understanding that HIV spilled over from animals to people allows us to better understand how the virus works and is helping us prevent new diseases from spilling over in the future. In our final example, we'll see how evolution applies to environmental protection by looking at the mystery of the growing deserts. All around the world, grasslands are steadily turning into deserts. Until recently, no one knew why. Alan Savory, a biologist from Zimbabwe, had been trained to study the health of different plant and animal species one at a time. His understanding of evolution, however, inspired him to step back and look at the health of entire communities of species at once. After all, if Darwin was correct when teaching that living things evolved to better survive and reproduce within their environments, they must be adapting not just to the climate and terrain, but also to the other creatures evolving alongside them. Different species could even evolve to cooperate and eventually depend on one another for survival. For example, sea anemones are marine predators which kill their prey with stinging tentacles. Sometime in the past, clownfish evolved an immunity to these stings, which helped them survive and reproduce. Some clownfish even went on to develop a dependency on anemones, using them as a safe place to hide from other deadly predators. If you remove anemones from a region of the sea, in many cases, the local clownfish will perish. Back in Africa, Alan noticed that as human populations expand, wild grazing animals often disappear due to hunting and loss of habitat. Inspired by Charles Darwin and the grazing research done by André Voisin, Alan wondered if local plants had somehow evolved a dependency on grazing animals. With wild herds gone, the plants were also dying. To test his hypothesis, Alan and his team brought large groups of cattle to a region of dying grassland. They moved the cattle in special herd formations designed to mimic the behavior of wild grazers which once lived in the area. In less than 1 year, the grasslands began to recover. After 3 years, they were thriving. Our understanding of the evolutionary relationships between grasslands and grazing animals is still fairly primitive, but it appears that in most seasonally dry places of the world, plants depend on wild grazers to till the soil with their feet, fertilize with their dung and urine, and remove excess vegetation so that new shoots can grow when the rains return. Understanding how these evolutionary relationships work is enabling us to save these environments for future generations. So, to answer our question, does the theory of evolution really matter? Absolutely yes. Besides just being interesting, the theory of evolution is continually guiding us to new, sometimes life-changing discoveries. I'm John Perry, and these were just a few of the many reasons evolution matters, stated clearly. This animation was funded by a grant from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute to Emory University's Center for Science Education in Atlanta, Georgia. To learn more about evolution and the examples presented in this animation, visit our website at statedclearly.com. To learn more about the Center for Science Education, visit csc.emory.edu. Until next time, stay curious.